When the world was tearing itself apart, one woman chose to step into the shadow of history's darkest man. She was the secret companion of a dictator, living in the lull between triumph and apocalypse, until her world exploded in ruins. This is the story of Eva Braun, but not simply as the young woman behind Adolf Hitler. She entered the inner sanctum of evil, and in the end made a choice that echoed the fate of the Third Reich itself. What drove her loyalty? What made her so dangerous? And how did she come to die alongside the man who would plunge millions into death? Eva Anna Paula Braun was born on 6th of February 1912 in Munich, into a comparatively modest Bavarian family. Her father, Fritz Braun, worked as a schoolteacher, and her mother, Franziska, worked as a seamstress. She was the middle of 3 daughters, and by many accounts a typical teenager of the time, interested in fashion, in socializing, in athletics. But Germany in the 1920s was not typical. Hyperinflation, defeat in war, and political ferment all plagued the Weimar Republic. In October 1929, when she was just 17, Eva took a job in the studio of Heinrich Hoffmann, the official photographer of the burgeoning Nazi Party. It was there that she first met Adolf Hitler, though he was introduced under the alias Herr Wolf, and she probably did not yet fully grasp the monster at work. Some accounts note that Hitler was taken with her brown eyes, reminiscent of his mother's, and that she, in turn, recognized him as a figure of fascination. Their age difference was stark. Hitler was 40 and Braun 17. Over the early 1930s, their relationship developed in secrecy. Hitler insisted that the facade of his public image remain untouched. He could not appear in love or partnership if he was to embody the Führer ideal. For this reason, Eva Braun remained largely hidden, attached to the private realm of his existence rather than the public face of power. She was in the wings, even as the Third Reich rose into full force while Germany plunged toward war. At the same time, Braun attempted suicide twice in the early 1930s, actions historians interpret as a sign of her desperation, her hunger for recognition, and possibly the instability of the world she inhabited. Hitler responded to the second attempt by buying her a flat in Munich and providing a degree of comfort, which in turn bound her more tightly to him. By 1936, she moved to the Alpine retreat of Berchtesgaden, to Hitler's chalet known as the Berghof. Here she lived in relative seclusion, removed from the public, yet immersed in the world of the Nazi elite. At Berchtesgaden, she skied, swam, socialized with Hitler's inner circle, watched films, processed photographs, even shot home movie footage of Hitler's off-duty hours, a chilling contrast to the speeches and brutality of his regime. Despite her proximity to power, Braun remained largely peripheral in political terms. Historians often describe her as uninterested in the ideology of Nazism, obsessed instead with private life. Clothes, appearance, parties, while the machinery of genocide and war rotated without her interference. The notion is that she was the perfect companion for Hitler, present but invisible, loyal but non-threatening. Yet, that interpretation has been challenged. Research by historians such as Heike B. Gertemaker argues that Braun knew more than she let on. She was embedded in the power networks of the Third Reich, and though she may not have been making policy, she certainly observed, benefited, and adapted. The metaphorical space she occupied, behind the curtain of evil, makes her one of the most morally ambiguous figures of this era. Consider the world around her during the years of war. While Hitler issued edicts that destroyed lives and entire populations, Eva Braun lounged at his side, photographed the mountains, socialized with ministers, and, as some evidence suggests, played hostess at the Berghof. Her home films depict frivolity and leisure, Hitler laughing with friends, enjoying the sun on the terrace. This duality is almost grotesque, how comfort and horror sat side by side. In the summer of 1944, the war swept decisively into calamity for Germany. Following the failed July plot on Hitler's life, Braun wrote to him, "From our first meeting, I swore to follow you anywhere, even unto death," according to one translated fragment of her private note. Whether this was genuine devotion or self-interest, the words reflect the mindset of someone who believed the Führer, the man who controlled everything, would never fall. It was at this moment that the veneer of her sheltered world began to crack. As Allied bombs rained down on Germany, as cities were retaken and the Reich's borders collapsed, Braun stayed at the Berghof even as she may have known the tide had turned. She was offered chances to leave, to escape, but she refused. She said later, "Do you think I would let him die alone? I will stay with him up until the last moment." In early April 1945, with the Soviet Red Army closing in on Berlin, Braun made a decision. She traveled from Munich to Berlin to join Hitler in his underground refuge. The man who had required her to stay hidden nearby now allowed her to enter his most intimate space, the Führerbunker beneath the Reich Chancellery. The spectacle of the Nazi regime, unraveling around them, contrasted horrifically with the banal intimacy of the bunker rooms. On the night of the 28th and 29th of April 1945, she and Hitler finally got married. A small civil ceremony took place inside the bunker, witnessed by his closest companions, Joseph Goebbels and Martin Bormann among them. Braun signed the certificate. She changed her name to Eva Hitler. Their union lasted barely 40 hours. The next day, 30th of April, at approximately 3:30 in the afternoon, Hitler shot himself in the right temple and Braun bit into a cyanide capsule. Their bodies were carried into the garden of the Reich Chancellery and set alight with petrol. The smell of burning flesh and the taste of defeat mingled in the air. SS guards followed Hitler's orders to cremate the bodies so that they would not fall into Soviet hands. The attendant witness, Hitler's valet Heinz Linger, described how Braun's face betrayed the horror of her death. She lay slumped next to him, the acrid smell of cyanide filling the room. In that final hour, the world Hitler had conjured collapsed into ruins. The Führer's final testament, typed while Braun stood beside him, blamed international Jewry for everything, denied his guilt, and sought to rewrite history even as his world died. Braun's presence in that moment is chilling. The woman who had chased him through years of secrets and private mountains had now become his wife and died by his side. What does her story tell us? Is she victim or accomplice, naive lover or opportunistic insider? Her early years show a girl drawn into a charismatic storm. Her later years expose a woman who refused escape, refused separation, even as the walls fell in. Some historians argue that without her loyalty, without her role as a private fixture shielding Hitler from intimacy, the Nazi leader might have been different, but that is speculation. The observable fact remains. She was there, behind the scenes, witnessing the machinery of horror, choosing to remain until the last. When we look at the home films she shot, we see laughter, bathing suits, sunny terraces, normality in the midst of madness. That contrast is haunting. As one historian put it, the perfect companion for the Führer was the invisible one. In journalism, often described as the belle of the Third Reich, Braun appears as a beautiful, smiling young woman. But that image hides something far darker. Enablement by proximity, silence in the face of atrocity, refusal to walk away when the end was obvious. It is critical to recognize that Braun, unlike many victims of the regime, held a choice. She could have walked away. She did not. She could have left when the bombs began to fall. She did not. She could have tried to save herself. And in the end, she died with Hitler, refusing capture. More than a bystander, she became a symbol of the tragic collapse of the Third Reich, its private, personal, human dimension. In the end, the war did end. Berlin fell, Hitler lay dead, Braun lay dead, the bunker emptied. The world would emerge from ashes. But what happens to the name Eva Braun after the war? Her family survived. Her father died in 1964. Her mother lived until 1976. Her younger sister Gretel, who had married an SS officer, gave birth to a daughter named Eva in May 1945. While the public remembered only the horrors and the leader, Braun faded into obscurity for a time. But history has paid renewed attention to her, because her life frames the private dimension of power. Another dimension, her personal films and photos. Many of the surviving color 60mm films she made at the Berghof show Hitler and his intimates at play. While not politically informative, they are psychologically revealing. They show a regime not of cold ideology alone, but of human leisure, domesticity, and terrifying banality. The fact that these images were captured by the companion of Hitler gives them an uneasy power. And so we face the question, after years of secrecy and comfort, why did Braun choose to join Hitler in Berlin when offered the chance to leave? Some answers lie in loyalty, some in fear, some in ambition. She had spent more than a decade at his side, her identity bound to his. The final act in the bunker was both a union and an escape from capture. She became Eva Hitler for less than 2 days, then ceased to be. Her death sealed her fate and Hitler's. But what of her moral legacy? What remains is the chilling truth that states often rely not only on grand speeches and armies, but on the quiet figures behind them. The smile, the house, the holiday, the seemingly trivial photograph. Eva Braun was that figure. She helped normalize the abnormal. She helped humanize the inhuman. And in doing so, she carried a heavier burden than she may have ever admitted. In the end, the story of Eva Braun is a study in intimacy with evil, a reminder that the human capacity for complacency can be as destructive as the grandest evil. From a young Bavarian girl fascinated by pictures, to the hidden companion of one of history's greatest monsters, to the last quiet passenger in the Führer's bunker, her journey forces us to ask, how close would any of us stand if power beckoned? Would we walk away, or would we stay? What do you think? Was Eva Braun simply a naive bystander? Or did her decision to stay until the end reveal something far more disturbing about complicity and choice? If you found this deep dive into one of World War II's lesser-known personal stories compelling, please hit the like button, subscribe for more historical documentaries, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.